Let me tell you right here and now about the outcome of your interview. Coming from a single parent in the middle of nowhere, you're bound to be useless, not hired. Your parents supposed to be dumb.
With those words and a laugh from the interviewer, Johnson, my worn resume fluttered to the ground. Clenching my fists on my lap, I mustered a response. I got it. Then, I stood up and left the room. I'm a 29-year-old woman, currently a part-time worker. After graduating from college, I quit a company I was working for last year. Now, I'm back home, helping my mom run the family farm. My dad passed away when my brother and I were young, and the farm was originally his. Life is more comfortable now, but it must have been a continuous struggle for my mom, managing the farm and raising us alone. That's why I felt a sense of inadequacy with how things were. When my brother started seriously considering taking over the farm, I wanted to repay my mom in a different way. I worked hard, graduated from a big-name university, and landed a job at a local company, which turned out to be a typical toxic workplace. So much overtime, working weekends often, and the boss's unreasonable demands were relentless. After more than 5 years, I quit due to physical and mental health issues. I was down after returning home, but slowly regained my spirits thanks to my mom and brother's encouragement. Thinking I couldn't stay this way, I restarted my job hunt. Why don't you just work here on the farm with your brother? My mom suggested, making me waver. But I knew I couldn't rely on them anymore. Sensing my dilemma, my mom, as if reading my mind, showed me employment information on her cell phone. It was a major food corporation based in a big city, similar to New York. According to her, they were hiring mid-career employees. This big of a company. I was hesitant, but after hearing my mom's reasoning and my brother's support, I applied. Somehow, I passed the document screening and found myself at the company for an interview. I never dreamed I'd be interviewing at such a big firm. Eck, I'm getting nervous. For a moment, I felt like running away, but I took a deep breath. At the reception, I asked for directions to the interview room for mid-career hiring. It seemed I was the last candidate for the day, and the waiting area was empty. Soon, the door opened, and a man who had just finished his interview came out. He had a gloomy expression. Did he have a tough time in there? Memories of my previous job flashed, but I shook them off. Entering the room, I saw 2 people seated. A man is in his late 30s, Johnson, and a woman about my age, Smith, sitting a bit away. After greeting each other and taking a seat, Johnson, the interviewer, and Smith, the note-taker, introduced themselves. The interview began, and Johnson frowned upon reviewing my resume.
Graduated from a famous university, huh? Why did you leave your last job?
I braced myself. I knew they would ask about my resignation. At my previous job, the workload and frequent weekend work affected my health, leading to my resignation. I prioritize work over myself due to my strong sense of responsibility. Now I'm recovered and ready to contribute, applying what I've learned. Before I could finish, Johnson burst out laughing.
What's this about strong responsibility? If you had that, you wouldn't have quit and would have stuck it out there.
His blunt words shocked me, and even Smith looked surprised at him. Johnson, unbothered, propped his cheek and flicked through my resume.
You can't manage yourself, can you?
I felt my cheeks burn at that moment. But I didn't intend to make excuses. You might be right. However, I intend to apply the lessons learned from why I resigned in my future work, I replied. As I said this, Smith nodded and typed on her keyboard. On the other hand, Johnson snorted in apparent disinterest.
Oh really? So, you look quite plain. Where are you from? What's your family like?
Johnson, that's...
Smith began to warn him against further questioning. But she hesitated, silenced by Johnson's stern look. Is my family background even relevant to this job? And calling me plain, how rude.
Oh, don't you want to answer? Got something to hide, maybe?
Johnson grinned at my hesitation. His words about hiding something struck a nerve. As if I have anything to hide. While internally rolling my eyes, I honestly answered that I come from a rural area, from a single-parent home with an older brother. Johnson started laughing again, his crude voice echoing in the quiet interview room.
Straight from the sticks. Quit your job because you couldn't take it, single parent and from the countryside. I totally get why you applied here.
What do you mean by that? I knew it wasn't going to be a good reason, but I asked anyway. Meanwhile, I turned my gaze to Smith. She had caught my attention. She hadn't been typing during Johnson's tirade. Realizing I was looking at her, she averted her eyes. Perhaps under some pressure from Johnson.
Don't you get it? Typical of someone raised by a single parent, lacking common sense. I pity you, no cultural knowledge or common sense. That's why you probably thought a big company like ours might hire you. Put yourself in our shoes.
After his relentless criticism, Johnson turned to Smith, right? But she just looked down silently.
Whatever.
Johnson scoffed, not getting the agreement he expected. I was trembling with anger. I was trying to stay calm, but it might have shown on my face. Johnson announced loudly,
Let me tell you right here and now about the outcome of your interview. Coming from a single parent in the middle of nowhere, you're bound to be useless, not hired. Your parent's supposed to be dumb.
Then, for some reason, he tore up my resume and threw it away. Pieces of what used to be my resume fluttered down. Who could have imagined such treatment and harsh words? I clenched my fists on my lap. I didn't mind being insulted, but I couldn't stand being ridiculed for my background and family by a stranger. Indeed, I quit my job once, regretted it, and felt down, but my family helped me regain a positive outlook. The anger inside me flared up even more. I got it. Then, I stood up and left the room. Right after stepping out, I took out my cell phone and made a call. He wanted to see my parents, huh? My mom answered quickly, concerned. What's up? Are you okay? She must have noticed the tremor in my voice. Just then, Johnson and Smith came out of the room. It seemed like it was indeed the last interview. Our eyes met firmly. Without looking away, I spoke to my mom on the phone. Mom, the interviewer is calling for you. Hearing my words, Smith looked puzzled, and Johnson burst into laughter again.
What? Did you call your mom? It seems you weren't independent from your mom. Typical of someone with no sense, raised by a single parent.
My mom seemed to hear Johnson's laughter and said, "I'll be right there," before hanging up. I smiled confidently and replied, "My mom will be here shortly. You wanted to see her face, right?" My mom arrived in less than 5 minutes. Surprised, Johnson said, "Wait, you had your mom waiting at the main entrance." Typical of a single-parent upbringing, overprotecting and hence not nurturing common sense. He continued to throw insults at both of us. My mom narrowed her eyes, seeming to understand what had happened. Just as Johnson was about to spew more insults, he noticed someone standing behind my mom and froze.
President Mike, why are you here?
Johnson's reaction startled Smith as well. The man referred to as the president calmly explained.
Well, I was just talking with her. I thought I'd accompany her if there was any problem.
Johnson looked bewildered, wondering why my mom and the president were together. My mom explained, "I came to the city with my daughter. While she was interviewing, I was discussing business in the president's office. I also wanted to thank him personally for the interview opportunity." She handed out her business card. "That's why she could come to me so quickly after the call." Johnson's eyes widened upon seeing the business card.
What? You're the representative of that big farm we trade with?
He then looked at me intently. "Yes, I am the daughter of the farm's owner," I replied. Johnson stammered, "If you had told me you were the daughter of our trading partner." Our farm's produce, managed by my mom, had become a branded product due to years of hard work and was famous in our local area. It was even gaining national recognition. I found out when my mom suggested this company that my late father and the president were close both personally and professionally. When I returned home and started job hunting again, my mom mentioned it to the president during a business conversation, and he offered me to take the interview and test at his company. My mom had explained this to me, but I was hesitant. 'Cause I don't want to be seen as getting a job through connections. The president, knowing how I felt, didn't inform the interviewers that a trading partner's daughter was coming.
What's this all about?
Johnson was in disbelief at my explanation. While he was flustered, my mom and the president were chatting amicably.
"The president has been looking after us since my husband passed away. I'm truly grateful."
Don't worry. Your husband was a great help to me, and it's not just that. It's because of the attractive produce you grow. Your farm has grown wonderfully. Your husband would be proud.
Listening to their conversation, I realized that although I knew my mom worked with various companies, I hadn't known she dealt with such a large corporation. My brother, being the successor, probably knew, but I had been oblivious until recently. The president turned to Johnson.
So, was there any problem?
No, sir, no problem at all. Right, Smith?
Johnson, looking desperate, sought agreement from Smith, who seemed confused and shifted her gaze.
You don't need to worry about causing trouble. Please tell me honestly.
The president encouraged gently. Smith, as if making up her mind, finally spoke up.
Johnson has been verbally abusive to all interviewees, including her, criticizing her appearance and single-parent upbringing. It's questionable behavior.
Johnson, furious, yelled, "You're lying," and reached out towards Smith. "What are you doing?" I quickly stepped in to protect her.
He also instructed me to only record what he wanted. I was afraid to disobey him. I'm so sorry.
Smith, seemingly having held back for a long time, tearfully exposed Johnson's actions from behind me. Finally, she handed the president a bag containing my torn resume. Johnson's face fell. Then I explained to my mom and the president 'cause they were wondering. He said me unfit for the job right here, saying a single parent, countryside upbringing made me useless. That's when he tore up my resume.
That's a lie. President, she's making it up. It's all false. She did it, not me.
Shaking my head at Johnson's attempt to shift the blame onto Smith even now, I approached the president and offered something. I recorded the interview. Please use this as evidence. I handed over a voice recorder. I had recorded the interview for personal review, thinking it would help if things didn't go well. Of course, I had no intention of posting it online, as that could be illegal.
You even recorded it.
Johnson looked defeated. According to Smith, the interview was originally supposed to be conducted by 3 people: Johnson, his supervisor, and Smith, the note-taker. However, his supervisor had to take leave due to a family emergency. There should have been another interviewer, but Johnson insisted on proceeding with just the 2 of them.
Johnson has always tried to find ways to be alone with me and made advances, which was really troubling.
You didn't need to mention that.
Johnson, flustered, raised his voice. Well, that's creepy. My mom, the president, and I all frowned in disapproval.
But why did you need to harass and insult my daughter?
My mom questioned Johnson. Reluctantly, Johnson admitted, I didn't like that she went to a better university than me. Indeed, Johnson had made a strange face when he looked at my resume. Surprised, I blurted out, "That's it." Johnson glared at me fiercely.
Yes, that's right. The guy before you, I didn't like his looks, so I rejected him on the spot, just like I did with you.
All this abuse and insult for just that. He had taken advantage of his supervisor's absence to reject candidates he didn't like, apparently as a stress reliever and to impress Smith. But showing such behavior certainly wouldn't win anyone's heart. For such childish reasons, you've hurled abuse and insults at others, as a professional. No, as a human being. How do you justify that? You labeled me as unreasonable for being raised by a single parent, but it seems to me you're far more unreasonable. I looked down at the speechless Johnson, while the president held his forehead, seemingly at a loss for words. The president then apologized to me, my mom, and Smith for the oversight. Remembering something, he asked, "By the way, Johnson, aren't you married?" Smith nodded in confirmation. He's married and was making advances on female employees. It must have been tough for Smith. Johnson slumped down, covering his face, overwhelmed with shame. Afterwards, I retook the interview and passed the test, securing my employment. I moved out of my family home and started living on my own again. Other candidates also had their interviews and tests redone, which was a relief. At the final interview, the president expressed his expectations. "I'm looking forward to working with you." As for Johnson, his inappropriate behavior during interviews, harassment of certain female employees, and other misconduct came to light, resulting in his transfer to a regional office. Rumor has it he's now divorced. As for Smith, who was the note-taker, we've become close friends, now calling each other by first names. I'm now working in a product development department, leading a busy yet fulfilling life. I'd be delighted to eventually work on products using vegetables from my mother's and brother's farm. To achieve that, I'm determined to work even harder.